Well, it's Christmas time again, and I decided to put together some more Christmas stories from Michigan's past. These stories all ran in Michigan newspapers in the early 1900s or late 1800s, and they're kind of fun. There's a mix of some poems as well as some stories. So come along and join me. One of my passions is searching for and resurrecting lost Christmas stories and poems from the past. It's such a wonderful time of year to let loose the imagination and at the same time spread some holiday cheer. I love going back into old newspapers, particularly around the 1800s and early 1900s, to find some of the stories that were published there in the spirit of Christmas, as the newspapers were the main form of entertainment during that time. And some of the stories were quite creative and somewhat whimsical at times. So I'm going to read a collection of stories and poems that I have found this year from all over the state of Michigan. This first story is more of an article. It was published in the Belding Banner on December 21st, 1899, and it's called Santa Claus as We Know Him. And it sets a good tone for the message of this video about Christmas time. It reads, "If all the little fictitious fairy tales and fancies dear to children were to be given up, what would become of the imaginations of the coming generation? We have been called a practical people. So we are. If anything, too practical. As we grow older, the realities of life crowd thick and fast upon us. Why then seek to destroy one of the most beautiful ideals of child life? Let the little ones hang up their stockings on Christmas Eve. Let them believe in the dear old white-bearded man, who is one of their happiest illusions. And, above all, let them be real children while they may, not miniature men and women, tired of the ideal side of life before they leave the nursery for the schoolroom. Yes, we believe that the best and truest mother can, with perfect justice to both her children and herself, conscientiously decide to keep Santa Claus in the especial niche in which he has sat enthroned for ages past. Give us Santa Claus. Throw the good old saint out into the snow? Put away those delicious Christmas Eve dreams when every stir in the household after dusk means the stamp of reindeer? Bring up a child without the belief in the chimney and its capacity to stretch on Christmas Eve? No, 1,000 times no. There's too little poetry in life now. Let the children have all of it that they can get. Says a recent writer, I wish there was a grown-up Santa Claus. I'd love to believe in him, and I would not thank anyone who told me he wasn't true. I'd listen to his sleigh bells with something very much like rapture, I'm afraid. I wouldn't be for the presents either. That isn't why the children love Santa Claus. They love him because he means that somewhere there's a great-hearted creature who is thinking of them and planning all year through to delight them." And I thought that was such a beautiful way to present and start this video. The next piece that I'm going to read is a poem that was published in the Battle Creek Daily Moon on December 24th, 1913. And it's entitled The Real Santa Claus, written by Wex Jones. We always picture Santa Claus as ruddy, plump, and jolly, snugly wrapped up in fur-lined coat, gaily decked with holly, whirling through the crisp night air, shot with bright star twinkles, while beneath his reindeer's feet the snowflake scarcely crinkles. The Santa Claus we always dream bears upon his back a burly, bursting, bountiful, joy-creating pack. And if his Christmas largesse should deplete his brimming store, all he need do is turn his team and speed right back for more. But alas, the real Santa Claus is often thin and weak, and no tingle of the wintry air brings color to her cheek. And often on the Christmas Eve, the Christmas spirit mocking, she sees beside her empty hand the tattered empty stocking. But childish hope is long-lived, and childish
faith is strong, and the stocking wait each Christmas lest Santa come along. So she skimps and starves and struggles to get the babes a toy. For what's her cold and hunger to her children's dream and joy? So when you think of Santa Claus, the one who's plump and jolly, the one who's snug in fur-lined coat and smiles through wreaths of holly, the one who of his plenty lavishes Christmas joys, where joys abound already on favored girls and boys. Oh, don't forget the others, the weary ones and worn, who render of their scanty store to brighten Christmas morn, and in the pleasant bustle of this happy season pause to lend a hand of helpfulness to the real Santa Claus. And that was quite a beautiful little poem with a wonderful message. The next story comes from the Adrian Daily Telegram, which was published on December 21st, 1901. And we're going to call this story The Plight of Miss Daisy Peachblow. And here it goes. If I'm not in error, Miss Daisy Peachblow said earnestly, compressing her lips in an ominous manner at each pause. If I am not wandering by the wayside mentally, you stated a moment ago that Reginald Sapley was a bright fellow. Well, I think I did make some good-natured remark, admitted Murda Hapgood. Why? Isn't he a bright fellow? Well, said Miss Daisy, he is either a fool or a naive. And I'm quite sure he isn't a naive. Then he must be a fool. There's only the fool left. Aren't you rather severe, Daisy dear? Judge for yourself. He was here all Christmas Eve, you know. Yes, he remained until 12 o'clock, I believe you said. That's true. 4 long and weary hours until midnight. And as you can see, I have this bit of mistletoe hanging from the chandelier in the middle of the room. Of course. Well, it was here last night, and during the long and weary 4 hours, I naturally happened to drift under it a few times, and he tried to kiss you, didn't he? Ha ha! Tried to kiss me? Cried the indignant Daisy. What? That bright fellow try to kiss me? Listen, every single time I happened under the chandelier, he jumped up and down, waving his arms in the air like a crazy man, and shrieked, "Look out, Miss Daisy! Look out! You're right under that mistletoe! Miss Daisy!" Bright fellow, fool, fool. And that was the end of that little story. So here's another poem from the Detroit Times, published on December 25th, 1908, along the same theme of mistletoe. And here it goes. Lucinda paused in her walk. I wonder why. She doesn't seem to care for talk. Lucinda's sly. Poor James is shy from toes to teeth, and very slow. But see, Lucinda stops beneath the mistletoe. James eyes the fateful Christmas berries, but still hangs back. Lucinda, cheeks as red as cherries, elopes with Jack. So that was another little funny poem about that same subject. And some of the poems around the Christmas time are just, in those papers, were just witty and comical and showed a little bit of the romance of the period in their writing. And it's just kind of fun. And we included some of that in our Tales of Christmas Past at the Battle Creek Regional History Museum this past December. The next story comes from the Pinckney Dispatch, and it was published on January 2nd, 1909. It was under a column written by Mary Graham Bonner, and the column was called Daddy's Evening Fairy Tale, and the story was called Pride of the Toys. And here it goes. "Oh, I'm so proud," whispered Little Brown Teddy Bear. "You're no more proud than I am," said a little white lamb. "Please pinch me so, and then I will say, ba, ba, ba. Ah, that will make someone happy." The toys were in Santa Claus's toy shop, and they were getting much excited. There were still some to be finished. In fact, there were many to be finished, but none of them were worried, for they knew perfectly well that Santa Claus never left any toys unfinished. That was the wonder part of Santa Claus. He could be rushed and hurried, and he could be so busy that you wondered how it was possible for him to do so much. And you might think, if you didn't know, that some of these many, many things wouldn't be done. But the toys knew, for the tools which Santa used to make them with whispered to them many secrets. He may be busy, the tools always told the new toys, but he'll finish you, and you'll go to the children on Christmas Day. We're sure he'll finish us, the toys now said, for not only have the tools told us so, but we can see from his dear, jolly, smiling face that everything is going to be done. He wouldn't be smiling if he were worried over things not being finished. He is simply very, very busy, and that is why he is working so. For no matter how hard Santa Claus may work beforehand, there are always so many things which had to be left until the end. Children then decide what they hope they will get for Christmas and write Santa letters. The letters have to be read, and every child has to have his or her own little list made out. Oh yes, as you can think, there are ever and ever so many things which Santa Claus simply has to do the last minute before Christmas Eve. I will be so very proud, said the teddy bear once more, if I am put on a Christmas tree. They say that Santa hangs toys on Christmas trees. But then I would be just as proud as if I were put on a stocking and see the children as they come downstairs on Christmas morning. In fact, I would be proud no matter where Santa Claus put me or how he gave me. It's a great, big, wonderful pride to be a toy made by Santa Claus, which is given to a child on Christmas Day. Yes, said the lamb, it is, and it's also especially nice to be an animal. That is, a make-believe animal. We can be hugged and loved, and we can have such a good time. It's fine to be any sort of toy made by Santa Claus, said a game in one corner of Santa Claus's workshop. It certainly is wonderful to be a Christmas toy anyway, said a rocking horse in another corner. It's nice, too, to be the toys in the city shops, said the train of cars. Of course, most, in fact, I believe all, the toys in shops are made by Santa Claus. He makes them during the summer months when he isn't so rushed. And then there are a lot of us he has to take around with him. Oh, packs and packs of us he has to take, so many packs I could never tell. It's a pride to be a toy at Christmas time, said another game. Whether we are put in a shop first or whether we drive right along with Santa Claus. Of course, he stops and gets many of his own toys in the shops. Indeed, said the lamb. Then why does he put them there? If he has to use them, I should think it would cause him extra work. Extra work, laughed the tools. Gracious, Santa Claus loves extra work better than anything in the world at Christmas time. And besides, there's a secret about having so many toys in the shops. What's the secret, they all asked, so that the children can see them and can know what they want most for Christmas. And that, once again, was a story that was run in the Pinckney Dispatch, and that community is just about northeast of Ann Arbor, Michigan. This next story was published in the South Haven Daily Tribune on December 16th, 1907. And the title of the story is Phone Message to Santa Claus, and it was written by Joe Anderson Norris. The toy telephone costs the magnificent sum of 5 cents. The little green wire just reached from the red mouth of the boy of 4 to his ear. It was necessary to stretch it a little for an adult. There were, of course, no wires from it going anywhere. The gentleman sat waiting for the lady to put on her hat to go out for dinner with him. The room was lighted by a big candle in a tall brass candlestick. The boy had lighted the candle for his own amusement. The man sat in a big rocking chair near the candle, the boy in his lap, playing with the man's watch, which was large, enticing, and made up largely of silver and a few baser metals. Do you want this watch? He asked the boy. Then, in an aside to the woman, I've a great notion to give it to him. It won't run. I should say I do, exclaimed the boy. If you'll be good, said the man, I'll give it to you for Christmas. I'll be good, promised the boy. Well then, said the man, I'll bring it myself. Or say, better yet, let Santa bring it. Where's that telephone? Oh, here, he said, taking up the toy instrument. I'll just ring up Santa and tell him about it. Hello, Central? Yes. Is that you? Central. Give me 338 Iceland, please. Hello? Called the man. Is that you, Santa Claus? Good. How are you, Santa? That's fine. I want you to do something for me Christmas morning. There's a big silver watch I want a little boy to have, but I live in Brooklyn. That's too far to bring it to him Christmas morning. He lives in New York. This is what I want to do, Santa. Stop by my place, get the watch, and bring it to the little boy who lives there in New York. You will? Thank you, Santa. All right. Goodbye. There, to the boy, he put down the phone. That's settled. Are you ready? To the woman, bring me my overcoat, will you, kitty? The boy sprang down from his lap and brought the overcoat, a heavy weight for his smallness. He laid it in his lap and then deliberately blew out the big candle, taking up 2 fingerfuls of the warm grease, smearing it on the overcoat. Well, look at this, cried the man. He has deliberately and with malice aforethought smeared grease on my new overcoat. He has ruined it. I wish you would come back here and look. The woman ran in and turned up the gas. And he had promised to be good, lamented the man. It isn't time yet to be good, the boy maintained stoutly. It's too long before Christmas. The man took up the toy telephone with an air of finality. Is that you, Central? He asked sternly. Good. Well, I wish you would ring up Santa Claus for me again, please. I wish to speak with him. Is this 338 Iceland? Please let me have Santa Claus again, will you? Thank you. This Santa Claus? Well, Santa, about the large silver watch I told you about a few minutes ago. The one I want you to call for in Brooklyn and bring over to New York to the boy in the 15th Street. You needn't bother about the watch, Santa Claus. I've concluded not to give it to the boy. Why? Oh, he's bad. That's all. He does things that haven't any sense in them. Just now, after I'd gone all through the trouble to call you up and on the long-distance phone to ask you about bringing the watch, he deliberately ruined my new overcoat. Took some candle grease and smeared it on it. Yes, it's a pity. But it can't be helped. A boy must not be encouraged in such behavior. The boy seemed to be thinking hard as he stood by, but he said nothing. I think, volunteered the woman, that I can take out the grease with a hot iron. I have put one on. I will lay a blotter on the coat, and the grease will come off in the blotter when I put it on the iron. Come in the kitchen and help me. The blotter and the hot iron had the desired effect. She held the coat up to the light triumphantly. The man carried the coat to the door of the music room in which the tragedy had occurred. They stopped at the door, for the boy's voice came to them softly. He stood at the table, the toy telephone in his ear. Is this you, Central? He asked wistfully. Yes? Good. Will you give me 338 Iceland, if you please? Thank you, Central. Isn't he polite? The woman whispered to the man. Is that you, Santa Claus? Asked the boy at the telephone. Good. Well, Santa, I'd like to tell you this. You needn't pay any attention to the last message from the Brooklyn that sent you about the silver watch. They got the grease out of the overcoat. And that was the end of that story. And finally, I'm going to close out this video with a story that was published in the Ludington Daily News on December 23rd, 1914. And it's called Plenty of Proof, and it was written by O.F. Woodruff. Teddy sat upon the top step of the stairs that led to the street and rested his chin on the palm of his hand. Some of the fellows came along and hallooed to him, but Teddy didn't answer. He didn't want to play with the fellows just now, for he was battling with a great sorrow. Tom had said it, so it must be true, for Tom was 8 years old and didn't have to go to bed until 8 o'clock. Teddy's hour for retiring was 7:30, and he realized the extra half hour made a man of the world out of Tom, while it left the unfortunate Teddy still a baby. Tom had struck his hands into his pockets. Tom's trousers were lovely and rough, just like his father's, and had swaggered around telling all the fellows that there wasn't any Santa Claus. When questioned further, he said that there used to be, but that this year there wasn't going to be, and there never would be again. No Santa Claus? If Teddy hadn't been 6 years old, he might have cried. But of course, one as old as he never cried. Teddy wondered if he'd better tell his mother. He decided he wouldn't. Why should his mother, whom he loved so dearly, be made to suffer any longer than necessary? It was hard, though, during the next 2 weeks, which seemed like years not to tell. And when Christmas Eve came and his mother gaily brought out his biggest pair of stockings and hung them up at the end of the mantel, he could hardly keep back the tears. How disappointed he and his mother would be when they got up in the morning and found the stockings empty. She leaned over and kissed him tenderly. "Are you tired, dear?" she asked. "You don't seem as happy as usual." Teddy assured her, as well as he was able for the lump in his throat, that he was perfectly well. His mother, like the wise one that she was, didn't press the question. She merely drew up her low rocking chair and sat beside the bed until she thought Teddy was asleep, and then she crept quietly downstairs. Teddy lay for a long time after she went, watching the firelight flicker on the walls. He couldn't go to sleep, and besides that, what was the use when there wasn't anything to wake up for? A good many tears rolled out of the corners of his eyes. But he didn't care now. He must have lain there for about 4 or 10 hours, he thought, and had just shut his eyes to rest them for the light when he heard a sound, a very little bit of a sound. He sat up quickly in bed and listened eagerly, because it really did sound, as if it might be sleigh bells. In a minute, he didn't know just how, he was leaning out of the window. He didn't feel as if he had walked there at all, but more as if he had just skimmed along without any effort on his part, as if he had been some sort of delightful fish bird. He leaned away out of the window, not feeling a bit afraid of falling, and looked down upon the street. Yes, down there in the street, as plain as day, he could see the reindeer shaking their long horns and prancing until the bells that seemed almost to cover them filled the air with their musical jingle. And then there was a gleam of red. Somebody had climbed into the sleigh. There was the echo of a jovial voice calling. The horns of the reindeer quivered joyfully, their little feet pawed the ground, and then the whole turnout seemed to leap into the air like a flash, and it was gone. Teddy rubbed his eyes. It was funny. He thought he was at the window, but here he was in bed. He sat up and looked around the room. The fire in the grate had gone out, but the gray light of the morning was beginning to steal through the curtains. Teddy slid out of bed and crept softly to the fireplace. The stockings were bulging in all directions, as had been their exhilarating wont in other years. He put out his hand and touched one of them gently. It was no dream. The stockings were full to overflowing. With a little sighing, whispering wheeze of joy and relief, Teddy clasped his hands into his knuckles, showed as white as snow the outside, and then, with a cry of absolute delight, he dashed into his mother's room. She opened up a pair of sleepy eyes at the sound of the pattering little feet. Teddy threw himself upon her, laughing and sobbing. "Oh, mother, mother, mother," he cried. "He came after all. Santa Claus did come. Santa Claus did come. He did. And this story was originally published in the Chicago Daily News and was rerun in the Daily News of Ludington. So what a wonderful little story and a great way to end this video.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this journey through history, looking at some old Christmas stories from the newspapers around Michigan from the early 1900s and late 1800s. I always enjoy looking through these old papers and finding these little nuggets of wonderful imagination that were published during that time period. And it was such a very interesting medium to explore. So if you liked today's video, please take a minute to hit the like button down there, subscribe to the channel, share the video with others, and have a very, very Merry Christmas. Thanks for watching.